Hi everyone, and thanks for joining. If you're new to my channel, typically I do videos about handmade goods like soap. It's something I'm passionate about, but I also wanted to share my experience with graphic design, going to school, and how that's worked out for me. I originally graduated from school about 10 years ago. Some of my things might not be super relevant to the current situation of going to school, but I have a lot of good information about helping you decide if school is worth it, and then I can also give you some insight of what it was like for me and if I found it to be valuable. I'm going to kind of do three separate sections in this video. One, I want to do like what are the classes, just give you a general breakdown of what graphic design school is like and what you should expect. Number two is your earning potential. I want to talk a little bit about what your potential earner is as a graphic designer. And number three, I want to talk about how much does it cost to go to school, was it worth it, and I want to talk specifically about how much it cost me to go to school, because I think it's a little bit unique and I think you guys will really like the tips that I have pertaining to that. Okay, one of the first things we want to talk about is what are the classes like. So there are a lot of different types of classes, and some of this is the part that has probably changed the most since I've been to school, because when I was in school, doing stuff on the computer was still relatively new. There wasn't a lot of people learning stuff online or self-taught. There was a little bit because I had a few areas that I was self-taught in, but the curriculum might change a little bit. So do you need art skills? Do you need to know how to draw even? I'm going to say you don't need to know how to draw necessarily, but you probably should have a natural knack for art, and whether it's creating things with your hands, something like pottery, or if you really love computer design, if you like video animation, if you like photography, any of those things sort of fit into a start of you might enjoy being a graphic designer. Just generally, if you're a creative person, this is probably a good path for you. So some of the classes that I took personally were, drawing classes, photography classes. I learned the entire Adobe Creative Suite, and it was way back when. I think they were on like Photoshop 2 or something. I don't remember. I did have a lot of hands-on classes where there were several classes where we actually, it was like a mixed media class, I think is what it was called, and you did painting. We did like weird projects where you took like colored pencils and like some photo paper and mineral spirits, and you did like a crazy watercolor almost drawing with colored pencils. It's just really weird. I took like an intro to graphics class, which just kind of was like basic, like this is a computer and these are the programs. It was really kind of simple, and that class I was a little bit bored with. I took a science of color class, so I learned about color theory and how it was relevant to your design work, and how to, what colors, you can have two colors sitting next to each other. And here's an example. You have two colors sitting next to each other and the color is relative. So you kind of like learn theories and why that works and why your eye picks up certain colors. So that was like one of my favorite classes. I also took a typography class. I took a web design class. At the time, web design was so different. I mean, that is not even relevant to stuff I learned now, and I haven't kept up with it. So that's one thing that, depending on what type of graphic design you go for, to think about. I also took a business class for design, and then I took some art history classes. So along with that, most of your college courses, when you go to school, you go like once, like my English class, I also took gen ed, sorry. My English class, for example, though, I would go to that like 2 or 3 times a week for an hour or so during the week. But my graphic design classes, I went like Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, and those were like 3 to 4 hour block classes. Usually the first hour and a half was more lecture style, and then the rest of the class was like a sort of hands-on, like let's create stuff, do group projects, stuff like that. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Okay, number 2. The point I wanted to make is, what is your earning potential as a graphic designer? I know that's what a lot of people want to know, and it is really important if this is a career that you're considering going into. I am going to give you a somewhat generic answer and say the earning potential ultimately is up to you, and the sky really is the limit with graphic design. I know people that are super successful and make six-figure salaries, and then I know people that make a more conservative salary or still starting out. I think this is also going to depend on what kind of education you have, is what your earning potential is. And that's just my personal opinion, and I'll go more into that when we talk about the education side. So I was doing some research on the actual earning potential, and I think I got this information actually from ZipRecruiter. And this is just last year's information. So, if you're watching this 5 years from now, obviously this is going to change, update, whatnot. So, the average hourly wage that I found in my state, which is Illinois, currently is at $20 an hour, and I think it's at this level mostly because in my area, probably graphic designers, you're not going to start out making $20 an hour. Maybe if you progress in your career and you get really lucky, or if you're doing freelance and working for yourself, you would be able to make closer to $20 an hour. But the jobs that I've had in this area, I've never made that much money. And part of that is because Chicago is in the state, so that kind of, I feel like, elevates our expected average salary in Illinois. Throughout the U.S., though, the lowest for graphic designers was $17 an hour, and the highest was about $25 an hour, and that was in New York. So if you kind of want to think about the areas you live in, a New York lifestyle versus an Illinois lifestyle or North Carolina lifestyle is very different. And the cost of living is very different in all those areas depending on where you live. Now let's talk a little bit about the school, how much it costs. Do I need an associate's degree? Do I need a bachelor's degree? Do I need to just forget the whole thing? So there's lots of different routes you can go. I personally have an associate's degree in graphic design and visual communication with a minor in, I don't even remember. So when I personally did job searches, a lot of job searches that I came across were requiring you to have a bachelor's degree. And even now, when I look for stuff, they want you to have a bachelor's degree. Now, I've applied for places that are very strict on that, and I've applied for some places that are, not so strict. So having an associate's degree has kind of bit me in the butt a couple times because I was unhappy at one of the jobs that I had over the years, and I just kind of wanted to get a different pace, a different work environment, a different type of design, I just was ready for something new. I felt like I wasn't growing in my graphic design career. So I started applying other places. One thing I found out is when I was applying places, some of the ones that I was applying to online, they don't necessarily ask you for a portfolio. It's just like a standard fill out this job application, work for a company, whatever. So the problem with this is I was applying for these jobs and they all say minimum requirement bachelor's degree. So I keep applying. I'm not getting any response back. I just started off saying hey, I've applied. I just want to know if the position is still open. And sometimes it would be even after they have filled the position, I would say, oh, I realize you have filled the position, but I was just curious to why I didn't even get an interview, or is there something wrong with my resume? I'm just trying to figure it out from a perspective of I've applied several places and I'm not getting anywhere. So it's okay. If that happens to you, don't get discouraged because there is work out there for you. But on the negative side, I did get a few places that replied back to me and said they weren't hiring me because of I didn't have a bachelor's degree. And there was a couple of places too that I asked, just out of curiosity, what's the starting salary? If you're requiring a bachelor's degree, I want to decide if it's worth it for me to go back to school. Most of the places I applied to, and I asked that question, the ones that did respond back, the starting salary was at what I was currently making or under what I was currently making. So for me, it would have not made sense to go back to school to get my bachelor's degree. The last thing I want to talk to you guys about is paying for your college. it is really important, and it is something you want to think about. And it's not something that I thought about initially when I first started looking at colleges. I toured a bunch of schools that I thought I wanted to go to for graphic design. I did 4-year universities, different colleges that were specific to graphic design. And out of all the ones that I looked at, I had my heart set on Columbia College of Chicago. It was just like nothing I had ever seen before as far as when I toured it. It had art studios that were amazing and inspiring. The students were just creating like awesome things. Couldn't even believe it. So I just knew I wanted to be there. I would like to have lived in the city, and I think it would have been a lot of fun. Now, the downside of that is when I looked into cost, it was quite pricey. So it was about $900 per credit hour. So I did out some math for you guys. So if I would have went with that college, it would have been around $86,000 to graduate, as long as I did the math correctly. So I kind of thought, well, that is a little bit out of the realm of possibilities, because it is recommended that if you do go to college, to not take out loans that are more than 20% of what your earning potential will be when you graduate. So this is kind of hard to determine for graphic designers because the spectrum is so wide, and it's going to be a lot dependent on you. So you do kind of want to go, I would say, the low end of the spectrum. And for my examples, we used around $40,000 would be the median pay in my state. However, I do think my particular area is quite a bit lower just because we're in a rural area and there's less demand for it. Also, the cost of living is just cheaper. A friend of mine suggested that maybe I look at some of the community colleges, and they weren't in my local community. I actually went out of state to a community college, which sounds kind of silly, but it ended up working out for me. When I looked up the cost for that college, it was going to be about $1,700 a semester. So for 2 years, the math came out to be just under $7,000. That was a little bit more affordable. That's something I could have paid off in a couple of years if I wanted to. Now, the unique thing about my situation that I kind of wanted to share with you, and I know you've probably heard this from your parents or everybody, is apply for scholarships and apply for grants, because I actually went to school and I made money. Not a significant amount of money, but I applied for literally every single scholarship under the sun. If somebody had brought to my attention, or if I saw something out there, I grabbed an application and I started filling it out. There were so many that were just like unfilled applications. We even had one at the school that the lady in the financial aid office, or wherever it was, where I was paying my bill that semester, said, "Hey, we've only had a couple people fill out this application." She's like, "I've handed it out to everybody today. The deadline's tomorrow. If you fill it out and bring it back to us, there's a chance that you might get it." So I'm not even joking, spent like 30 minutes, filled out this application, wrote the 500-word essay, and I turned it in, and I did get the scholarship. So it was a significant scholarship too. It paid for the entire semester. So with financial aid, multiple scholarships, I did get money back. And what happens is basically all that stuff gets paid to the college first, and they get all their checks, and then the college says, "Hey, you've overpaid." So the college at the end of the semester, at least where I went, gave me the option to get a paycheck back. So yes, that's right, I had a paycheck. However, for like graphic design or maybe like art majors, you do have a lot of supplies you have to buy for school. So what did I do with that money? I spent the money back on school supplies. I used it to pay for my art supplies that I needed, any technology that I needed. I got a new computer. If you're going to school now, you could probably get a pretty awesome tablet or something like that. Any of the software that you might need can be pretty expensive. So if you're going to do that route, it would be smart to apply the money in that way.